For the second consecutive night in MLB DFS, you've got options. You've got Garrett Cole at the top. You've got some good second-range pitchers, but also at least one value play I feel really good about for today. So it's another really solid multi-entry type slate where you can play things a lot away, and I think we might wind up being a little bit different than consensus for our pitcher rankings for today. So let's dive on in and get you set for Wednesday's slate. Welcome on into the solo shot. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com, here to break down Wednesday's main MLB DFS slate. It is a 10-game slate with locks set for 7:05 for this evening. As far as weather goes for today, there is a chance of rain tonight in Atlanta for the Braves and the Jays. Nothing too bad. They should be good to play there, but just keep an eye on that because Atlanta can occasionally have some pop-up storms once it's warmer. So they should be good to go, but make sure you check back on that one later. But outside of that, really nothing popping for today from a weather perspective. So it should be good to go to play things pretty straight up. Some colder temperatures still out east in the Midwest, but overall, a fun slate. We can play things, for the most part, however we would like to. We'll still have some updates later today on the 4 p.m. stream. That is on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Make sure you are subscribed there. Make sure you tune in 4 p.m. Eastern to ask your questions about this slate and about every slate, as we are live every weekday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Also, if you're playing some PGA DFS this week, make sure you check out our PGA DFS podcast, The Heat Check, right here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. That is with myself and Brandon Gadula breaking down this weekend's event. Full thoughts on which studs we're prioritizing, which value plays, roster construction, all that up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed right now. Hey, baseball fans, FanDuel is offering a special selection of MLB contests this year. Play in the daily MLB Hot Streak eligible contests from now to May 21st to build your streak and win daily cash prizes. Have at least one lineup finish in the top 50% of the daily contest, and your streak continues. If one of your lineups does not finish in the top half, it ends. Your streak ends, and you can start a new one the next day. Build the longest streak for a chance at the $15,000 grand prize. Start your winning streak today with FanDuel at FanDuel.com/MLB-hot-streak for more information. Eligibility restrictions apply. Pitching preview for this Wednesday slate. Garrett Cole, as mentioned, is the highest salaried pitcher available. He is $12,000, but well worth it. Brandon Woodruff checks in at $10,600 with Danny Duffy facing Detroit. He is $10,200. Julio Urias is $9,700. Zach Wheeler's $94,000. Then we have Zach Gallen, Andrew Heaney, and Max Fried as the others at $8,000 or higher. And I mentioned that I might be different from the pack with my second pick. I will not be different with the first pick. That is Garrett Cole. I am obligated to do this. Even on a really good slate, Cole is still worth it at $12,000, especially because I do think there are some good value hitters we'll talk about in the stacking section. Cole's facing the Rays. They're about a league average offense overall. They have a 25% strikeout rate against righties, which this year is roughly league average. So they're not a sieve matchup, but I think that with Cole, what you're looking for is not a plus matchup. You are making sure he is not facing some super elite team that puts the ball in play all the time. That's kind of the one thing that can cause a yellow light for Cole. I did still use him against the Astros last week. Didn't turn out super well, but I'm not getting a yellow light unless it's a really tough matchup. The Rays are not that, especially because Cole has been just unreal this year. We can afford to go at matchups that may not be the most favorable. He is using more four-seam fastballs this year and are using fewer four-seam fastballs in favor of more changeups this year. And if you look at the numbers, seems to be working pretty well for him. He has a 1.84 skill interactive ERA with a 40% strikeout rate. That includes his start last week where the Astros did put the ball in play quite a bit. His walk rate is 2%. So even with a low strikeout matchup last week, he still has a 40% strikeout rate for the season. That's disgusting. He faced the Astros last week. They lead the league in strikeout rate against righties. He's faced the Blue Jays twice. They rank 9th, whereas the Rays are out in 22nd. Cole faced this team back on April 18th. That is almost a month ago, so no concerns from me about familiarity with his pitches. Got 10 strikeouts across 6 and a third innings, so it's hard for me not to go here regardless of the salary. If you're thinking about this in terms of range of outcomes, there are other guys on this slate whose ceiling is equal to Cole's. No one's as high. They're equal to Cole. The reason I still go with Cole at $12,000 is that the odds he reaches that ceiling are higher for him than what we have for the other people. So to me, that's why Garrett Cole is worth a salary $12,000. It is not because his ceiling is higher. It's because his odds of reaching that ceiling are higher, and that is a differentiator for me. So Garrett Cole still number one at $12,000. The second spot is between Danny Duffy and Brandon Woodruff. Woodruff is at home against the Cardinals. Duffy is on the road, but he gets to face the Tigers. And I'm guessing if you peruse Twitter for today, you're going to see a lot of stats about how bad the Tigers have been against lefties this year. Small sample, but, they're really bad. And the matchup is great. And we're going to talk about him and things to watch. But because I would assume people are going to just drool over those Tigers numbers versus lefties, I'm expecting Duffy to be the more popular guy between these two. So I'm going to rank Woodruff second here at $10,600 behind Cole, which may be different, but I just think that Woodruff is the better overall pitcher between these two guys. And the matchup advantage for Duffy isn't big enough to erase that gap. It's more about me being high on Woodruff than low on Duffy. Woodruff, awesome all of last year. He's carried that into 2021 as well. He's been doing something different too. Been featuring his curveball more often this year, especially if we look from his second start on. And it's still not a high usage pitch, but it's a very interesting pitch because it just falls off the table. Like if you look at the movement data on this curveball, that sucker moves down and it generates a ton of ground balls. If we look at the 6 starts where Woodruff has used a lot of curveballs, he has allowed just a 3.8% barrel rate against. That improves his floor, makes his range of outcomes smaller, but in a good way. Now, the one downside with the curveball is that it's not a big whiff pitch. He doesn't get a lot of strikeouts with that pitch specifically. So the risk would be with the increased curveball usage, although you get the increased floor, maybe it decreases the ceiling because he gets fewer strikeouts. That hasn't really been the case, though. He still has a 34% strikeout rate in this 6-start sample with more curveballs. He had 11 strikeouts last week against the Phillies. That game was on the road. Now he's back at home. He's gone at least 6 innings and gotten a quality start in all of those 6 outings that he's had with more curveballs. He's at home. Only 2 of those 6 starts have been at home. One of those is against the Dodgers. So he gets a plus matchup at home for the second time since he started using this pitch more often. He's been really good even while being on the road and potentially facing some tougher teams. I would expect Duffy to be more heavily rostered due to the matchup, due to the narrative around what we're going to see here. So I'm going to go Woodruff. I think he's better straight up. And I think Duffy's good. We'll talk about him and things to watch. I just think that Woodruff is better straight up. And if we get a popularity edge on him, as far as him being less rostered, I'll take that for sure. So to me, it's Cole 1, Woodruff 2, Duffy 3, as far as ranking the pitchers for tonight. Julio Urias is a good pitcher, and he's got a decent matchup with the Mariners. The reason I'm ranking him lower is that pitch count concerns, 79, 95, 90, 88, 87, 90, 76. So the pitch count is what lowers me on Urias. I still think he's on the table, but not someone I'm going to get to over these guys for today. As far as a value play, we get to focus on a revenge game tonight. Zach Gallen is facing the Marlins, and he was part of the Jazz Chisholm trade a couple years ago. No Jazz tonight. I think he's in a rehab stint right now. But we get Gallen against the Marlins, and Gallen hasn't been lights out so far this year, but I do still think he is a top value play for me. He is $8,200. So if you're looking to make different lineups from the Woodruff, Cole, Duffy lineups, you're getting that here with Zach Gallen. The strikeouts have been there. Like, that's not the concern for me. He has a 28% strikeout rate. The issue with Gallen since he came off the injured list is that the walks are back. That's an issue that Gallen's had most of his big league career. He really struggled at the start of 2020 and then made an adjustment, and that immediately cut down his walk rate. He pitched really, really well across the summer after that adjustment. The walks are back now, and I'm not sure they're going to go away, given he just walked 4 guys in his most recent start, but this will be just his 3rd start at home this year. That could help. The Marlins, not a high walk team. They have an 8% walk rate versus righties. It's not like a low number, but it's not a high number either. They have an 86 WRC plus against righties with a 27% strikeout rate. So I view them as being a good matchup. And Gallen is showing signs of upside. That's the way I'd phrase that. Like, he's not like walks lower your upside because they increase your pitch count. So that I can't say he is like a super high ceiling guy, but he's showing signs of upside is the way that I phrase it. The pitch count is built up for Gallen too. He went 98 in his first or his second start this year. He's been at 93 and 96 in his past two. I like a lot of what he's doing. The only issue I see with Gallen, outside of the walks, we set those aside, is that they'll likely have the roof open tonight. It's 96 degrees in Phoenix, but they've been very okay leaving that open despite the high temperatures. That's a pretty tough condition for pitching. I do still like Gallen and will use him either way. I'm focusing on the ceiling here, and he's got that. But if they do decide to close the roof for tonight, which again I'm not expecting, that would be a boost to his floor as well. So among the value plays, Zach Gallen to me, pretty easily the top option. I like Andrew Heaney a decent amount, but he's facing the Astros. They don't strike out. So we'll avoid that the potential hard contact there and just go with Gallen instead. So a good pitching slate for today. And again, we'll talk more about Duffy and things to watch so you can decide if you want to rank him above Woodruff for your own personal rankings. Let's go to stacks first, though. And there was a stretch this year where I stopped stacking against Justin Dunn. I had decided that he just didn't let up enough balls in play for me to stack against him. I'm starting to change my tune on that. And I think that we should stack the Dodgers against him tonight. And part of it's because he is allowing more balls in play now. He had 8 walks in his first start this year. And over his next 4 starts, the past 4 starts he's had, it's just 9. Like, that's still a high walk rate, but like it's, not 8 at least. And he's escaped unscathed so far. I'm not sure how long that will last because when Dunn is letting up balls in play, a lot of those are being well struck. He's let up 7 barrels in those 4 starts, 21 hard hit balls in those 4 starts, but he's allowed just 3 home runs. And it's not because he's getting ground balls either. His ground ball rate is 30%. For the full season, Dunn has a 20% strikeout rate and a 15% walk rate. He has allowed a 10% barrel rate. So would I prefer Dunn to not walk as many guys and let up more balls in play? Yes. But the Dodgers don't strike out much. That's one less route for lowering balls in play. And at least when they walk, they'll be littering the base paths. So if one of those barrels does come back to bite Dunn, it's likely going to be a multi-run homer. And that's a big thing for us for DFS. There's a lot of upside in that. If we look at Dunn's expected ERA at Baseball Savant, it is 5.16. His actual ERA is 3.51. I think regression will come here pretty soon, and it could easily come via the Dodgers for tonight. The Dodgers bring regression for a lot of people because they're a pretty good offense. So I think the Dodgers do deserve to be at the top of our list for today, and they're not like super restrictive from the salary perspective. Our favorites here on the solo shot, Will Smith and AJ Pollock, are $3,000 and $2,600 respectively. Pollock is banged up, but they said he was available to come off the bench last night, so he might start today. Gavin Lux finally starting to hit his stride after coming off the injury list. Really struggled with strikeouts initially when he came off. Had a dinger last night. He's striking out less more now. He's had a barrel in consecutive games. I am willing to use Lux at the minimum if it makes it easier to get to the top-end guys in the Dodgers. So like a middle to bottom of the order stack of Smith, Pollock, and going with Lux, I think that works. You have to make sure Smith is in there because, he's a catcher. But I think that if we get those guys, I'd be willing to go there for tonight. Moving on to our second stack, John Lester's first 2 starts this year have been successful. He has a 2.70 ERA. His expected ERA is 3.70, so not like super lucky. And even when he regresses, he would look pretty good. And the velocity was up in his second start. I'm just not sure the good start for Lester will hold, so I'm looking to stack against him here with the Phillies. And the big reason is that Lester just isn't getting strikeouts. He has a 15% strikeout rate through 2 starts this year. That is in line with his 16% strikeout rate last year. His walk rate is increasing, which does mean fewer balls in play, and he's getting some whiffs. So the strikeout rate could come up. But to me, that's nothing concerning. Even when his strikeout rate goes up, it's going to be somewhere around like 18 or so % based on the swinging strike rates. That's fine. In order for Lester to succeed as a pitcher, he needs to be tremendous with his batted ball suppression. He's been that so far this year. He has a 3.2% barrel rate against. I just don't know if that'll stick because that's across 31 balls in play. And if we're looking at stabilization rates for batted ball numbers, they tend to be between like 60 and 80 or so. He's about half that. Last year, Lester let up a 12.3% barrel rate. So I would expect his barrel rate against to increase as the year goes along. And if it does, given the low strikeout rate, the wheels could fall off pretty quickly. Last year, he had a 5.16 ERA, 5.02 skill interactive ERA, and I would probably bet that's where he's headed towards this year as well. So I think the Phillies make sense as a stack as a result of Lester's potential for struggles in the future. It does help that some of the non-elite bats for the Phillies get a bump up against lefties. Alec Boehm has looked totally lost at the plate against righties, just like terrible batted ball numbers, but a 276 ISO against lefties, he's $2,800. Andrew McCutchen is hit for a lot more power against lefties. So I might prefer them against lefties, even though it does take away the platoon advantage for guys like Bryce Harper and Didi Gregorius. I think I actually prefer them against lefties because the secondary options on this team are better against lefties and righties. So boost up the Phillies here versus the lefty. I think that they deserve to be number 2 on our stacking list. Now, the problem with the Dodgers and the Phillies is that they don't have like massive values outside of Gavin Lux. They're not going to move the needle a ton in making it easier to get to Garrett Cole. So for this third stack, we have to keep some value in mind. The Royals actually do move the needle a bit. So I'm actually on board of stacking them against Casey Mize. Mize is coming off a good start. He held the Red Sox to 1 run over 6 innings. And that could be because he's using his sinker more often right now. He'd thrown it like 17-ish% of the time his first 3 starts. That's up about 10 percentage points in his past 3 starts. And it makes sense too, because he was getting rocked, had to make changes, and he did. But I don't think that the movement in the batted ball suppression for Mize is enough to offset the issues he's having elsewhere. Even in the 3-start sample with the more sinkers, he's still letting up a 7.8% barrel rate. That's not terrible in a vacuum, but when you have a 14% strikeout rate and a 14% walk rate, it's kind of like we discussed with Lester. You need to be an outlier in the batted ball department to succeed. And Mize is not that right now. He's about average. He had a really rough outing in that 3-game stretch too. The good game against the Red Sox is there, but in his first start in the stretch, he let up 6 runs across 4 2/3 innings. And the team that did that to him was this very same Royals team. That game was also in Detroit. It's the exact same setup for tonight. Mize might wind up getting a bunch of ground balls with this sinker, and if that is the case, I will lower my thoughts on stacking against him. But I feel pretty good in saying he won't get strikeouts, and that's at the top of our list. So I'm going to keep on stacking against Mize and see what happens. I can reevaluate later on, but for right now, I do think it's advantageous to stack against him. And as mentioned, the Royals really do bring us some good value. Andrew Benintendi starting to hit the ball well again. He is $2,700. Jorge Soler trimming down the strikeouts. He's $2,500. Hunter Dozier is $2,400. Not striking the ball super hard, but he's putting the ball in the air at least. And what I would deem to be the best hitter on this team, Salvador Perez, is $3,200. Carlos Santana is $3,400. They are a very easy team to get to, even when you're building around Garrett Cole. So what I would say is if you've got one lineup and you want to go Garrett Cole, I would stack the Royals first and then see what you can afford on the Dodgers. Like if you can get up to the studs and the Dodgers as a result of stacking the Royals, to me, that's a good way to play things. Could do the same thing with the Royals and the Phillies if you wanted, if you weren't as into the Dodgers. I think that makes sense too. So to me, the Royals grade out really well and make it a lot easier to stack Garrett Cole. Let's finish up here with things to watch. As mentioned, I do like Danny Duffy, and I want to talk about him here in case you want to decide that you want to rank him above Woodruff for your personal rankings. The Tigers, as mentioned, are a very bad team against lefties. It's a small sample, but like the numbers that stabilize most quickly are the spots where they're the worst. They have a 35% strikeout rate versus lefties this year. It's led to a 37 WRC plus. It ain't great when your strikeout rate is almost as high as your WRC plus. That should not be possible. They'll get better as the year goes along, but I think that it's okay to view Duffy as being in a massively plus matchup. He's also going super deep into games. The reason that I rank Woodruff higher is that Woodruff, his skill interactive ERA is 0.7 runs better. His strikeout rate is 5 percentage points higher. He's at home. Duffy's on the road. Duffy is facing a DH, whereas Woodruff is not. That's enough for me to put Woodruff higher, but I do think it's very defensible to prefer Duffy. So to me, it's Woodruff 2, Duffy 3, but they're in the same tier. So if you don't get the same read that Duffy will be way more popular and you want to go with the good matchup, I understand. But for my personal rankings, I prefer Woodruff straight up, and I'm hoping that we get him at a popularity discount for tonight. As far as other options for hitting, J Happ has gotten off to a good start this year, but I'm willing to stack the White Sox against him here. Happ mostly just getting lucky with balls in play. His skill interactive ERA is 5.20. He has a 15% strikeout rate, and his barrel rate against is 9.5%. The White Sox have a lot of guys, even with all their injuries. They've got a lot of guys who can pound lefties. It's not great weather, so I'm not going to go too crazy with the White Sox for today, but I will stack them here against J Happ to see what they can do. If you want some more value options, not as high on them as the Royals, but I do think the Brewers are worth checking out. They're facing John Gant, who is a low strikeout, high walk guy, similar to Justin Dunn. The ground ball rate for Gant is 50%, and that's much lower than what it was when he was a reliever last year. That helps. His ERA is 2.15. His expected ERA, which accounts for things like ground ball rate, is 5.68. He's probably going to regress eventually, so the Brewers, I think, make sense, especially because they have guys who really move the needle from a salary perspective. Luis Urias is minimum salary, but he has a 46% hard hit rate against righties this year and a 160 ISO. That's not great, but it's not terrible for minimum salary, and he's got some speed too. So I would say if you're looking for a min salary one-off to help you maybe get to the Dodgers studs, I think Urias fits that. Good as a one-off, as are some other guys here like Travis Shaw, but I'll consider the Brewers as a stack as well to give me more flexibility with my second stack in my Cole lineups. That is all that we have for today, but as always, if you have questions for me, make sure you tune in 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. We will break down things there and answer your questions about pitchers, stacks, one-offs, general process, whatever it may be. We can tackle those questions live on air today at 4 p.m. the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. Again, if you are playing PGA this week, check out our PGA podcast, myself and Brandon Gadula, by searching for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Wherever you get your podcasts, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Radio.com, Google Podcasts. No matter where you're finding your podcast, we are there. And while you're there, leave us a rating and review as well. If you have questions for me before 4 p.m., I am on Twitter at JimSannes, JimSannes. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for setting up the video broadcast for today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you with your MLB DFS lineups for tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. This has been the solo shot right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network.